Hello, COS supporters, and welcome back to COS Live. My name is Andrew Luce. I'll be your host today. So earlier today, we were in South Dakota where there was a hearing held for Convention of State resolution, and that was in Pierre. Now we're going all the way over to Des Moines, Iowa. So we're going to be expecting a subcommittee hearing on our resolution in just a few minutes. At the top of the hour, they're going to be discussing our Article 5 application. It's going to be in the House Committee on Government, on State Government. And this is, of course, in consideration of our Article 5 resolution. You will hear it referenced as HJR 2024. That's House Joint Resolution 2024. So if you're wondering what this is all about, we're using the Constitution to restore the Republic. It's as simple as that. Article 5 allows we, the people, to petition our state legislators to call a convention to propose amendments. So far, 20 states have done that. We have 20 states that have passed our Convention of States resolution. And that means we need 14 more to go to get to the magic number of 34 states. Once 34 states agree to meet, they can get together at a convention and propose and debate amendments to the U.S. Constitution. And under our Article 5 application, that would be amendments that would cover spending restrictions on Congress, limits to federal power, and also term limits for federal officials. So those are three key policy issues, and we need amendments for all three of those because we got too many career politicians that spend too much of our money and put too much of their power centralized in Washington, D.C. So we're going to be coming up in just a few minutes in Iowa. So I just want to cover on how we got to Iowa in the first place. So Convention of States action, our whole mission, our whole ethos is to drive legislation by getting the people involved. So we have more than 60,000 petition signers in Iowa. That means 60,000 citizens have said yes to COS. I want to see this happen in my state, which is an incredible milestone. We recently got to 60,000 petition signatures. So way to go, Iowa, for doing all of the hard work out there in the field, collecting petition signatures. Now, the team is really hard at work. They do all kinds of state fairs, gun shows, and other events that, in Iowa to get those petition signatures. And they are just diligently working the whole state to get more people to join this movement. And also, they are hard at work getting key influencers within Iowa. People like Steve Deace, who is part of the Blaze TV. He is a strong supporter of Article 5 and Convention of States. Also, Bob Vanderplots, who is part of the Family Leader organization. Both of those are huge names in Iowa, and both of them have come out strongly for Convention of States. They even come to events such as Capitol rallies and other things where they talk to our supporters and talk to people about the need for a Convention of States. So last year we had a successful vote in the committee, the subcommittee that we're going to be going to in just a few minutes. But unfortunately, we never scheduled for a full floor debate and vote. So disappointing, of course, but that doesn't stop the Iowa team from continuing to enter our resolution into the legislature. And they're hoping that this year they're going to get farther than they've ever gotten before. And we want to get Iowa across the finish line because Iowa is a key state to getting to that magic number of 34 states. So today, this is step one in the process for Iowa. We're going to a subcommittee hearing. This is where there will be the only opportunity for public comments. Usually in other states, what you see is it's a full committee and we have public comments. But in Iowa, they do things a little bit different. So it's going to be a subcommittee. So it'll only be about 3 members on that committee. And people will be able to offer testimony for our resolution or against our resolution. And then from there, it'll go to the broader committee where the committee members will debate among themselves on whether or not to send our resolution to the full floor vote. So if the vote is successful today, we'll still need to work through that full committee. So hopefully, though, they will indeed do the right thing and that they will pass out of the subcommittee and on to the full committee. So stay tuned after the hearing because we are going to hopefully get some recap and we will get an on-the-ground reaction from Regional Director Karen Schuster, who is a Iowa native, and she's expected to be one of the people testifying there today. So we still have a few minutes before we go live to the committee hearing. We do have a really great video while we wait that producer G has pulled together, and it's going to be a video that kind of gives you an overview of some things that are happening. So we're going to let that play, and then hopefully by the time that video is up, we'll be at the subcommittee. We'll start the subcommittee. So producer G, you got that video?
Executive Summary, Convention of States. America is spiraling out of control. People who respect neither our institutions or our citizens are in control of the levers of power in Washington, D.C. They intend widespread destruction to the foundations of our republic. The bottom line is that Washington, D.C. today enjoys almost unchecked power. This is a systemic problem that requires a systemic solution. This is about more than elections. Elections cannot and will not solve the problems of a broken system. The only solution big enough to fix our nation's problems is a convention for proposing constitutional amendments to rein in federal tyranny. This is the people's final check on D.C., exercised through their state legislators, the ingenious plan of the founders to make state legislators' ambitions for state power counteract federal officials' ambitions for federal power, for the good of the people. While there is nothing wrong with the Constitution as drafted and ratified, the problems we now face are undeniably the result of improper constitutional interpretations by the federal courts, i.e. the General Welfare Clause, the Necessary and Proper Clause, and the Commerce Clause. Conservatives like to say that federal officials ignore the Constitution, but what they actually do is creatively lawyer around its limitations via Supreme Court rulings expanding federal power. We can and must restore the federal government to its proper limited place by pushing back on the expansion and effectively overturning bad Supreme Court precedents that have eviscerated the founders' intended limitations on our federal system. The Convention of States resolution seeks to do this by using the tool given to the states in Article 5 of the Constitution. It calls for an Article 5 convention limited to proposing amendments that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. How the process works. Article 5 of the Constitution provides two ways in which amendments may be proposed. Congress may propose them, or the states can call a convention of proposing amendments upon application of 2/3 of the state legislatures, or 34 state legislatures. Regardless of which way amendments are proposed, they must always be ratified by 3/4 of the states, or 38 states. The amendments that can be proposed must be germane to the resolution, limited by the language of the resolution itself, passed by the state legislatures as the subject matter of the convention. Only the proposed amendments that pass by a simple majority, 26 states, shall be put forth for ratification. They are mere suggestions until ratified. COS resolution language. The COS resolution's operative language defines the limits of the types of amendments that can be proposed. The operative language is as follows. Section 1. The legislature of the state of hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States for the calling of a convention of the states limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. Types of amendments that could be proposed. Limiting Supreme Court justices to 9 members of the court, preventing the federal government from adding states without the affirmative consent of 3/4 of the existing states, a limitation on using executive orders and federal regulations to enact laws, a balanced budget amendment, including limitations on taxes and spending, imposition of generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, single subject amendment, 1 subject per bill in Congress, a redefinition of the General Welfare Clause back to original intent. The original view was the federal government could not spend money on any topic within the jurisdiction of the states. A redefinition of the Commerce Clause back to original intent. The original view was that Congress was granted a narrow and exclusive power to regulate shipments across state lines, not all the economic activity of the nation. A prohibition of using international treaties and law to govern the domestic law of the United States. Placing an upper limit on federal taxation. Requiring the sunset of all existing federal taxes and a supermajority vote to replace them with new, fairer taxes. Religious Freedom Amendment, prohibiting the government from further interference with our religious freedoms. Regulatory curtailment by forcing Congress to vote on regulations instead of deferring lawmaking to regulators. Public opinion polling. Polling conducted across the nation indicates that, on average, 65.7% of voters across party lines support the Convention of States resolution. That includes 81.3% of Republicans, 50.2% of Democrats, and 63.3% of others. Polling was conducted by Robert Cahaly of the Trafalgar Group, America's most trusted and accurate pollster in the 2016, 2018, and 2020 elections. COS founders. Convention of States was founded by Mark Meckler, co-founder of Tea Party Patriots and president of Citizens for Self-Governance, and Michael Farris, founder of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, Patrick Henry College, and the former CEO of Alliance Defending Freedom. COS endorsers. Former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum now serves as senior advisor to Convention of States. Major endorsers include, but are not limited to, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Ben Shapiro, Governor Ron DeSantis, Representative Mark Meadows, Charlie Kirk, Pete Hegseth, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, Dave Rubin, Representative Chip Roy, David Barton, James O'Keefe, Steve Dace, David Horowitz, Eric Metaxas, Dr. James Dobson, Representative Louis Gohmert, Senator Rand Paul, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Jim DeMint, Governor Greg Abbott, the Honorable Jeb Bush, the Honorable Ben Carson, the Honorable Mike Huckabee, Governor Sarah Palin, Governor Bobby Jindal, Kenneth Cuccinelli, Representative Jeff Duncan, Representative Ralph Norman, Senator Jim Talent, and many more. The late U.S. Senator Tom Coburn was one of the leading proponents of COS and also served as a senior advisor. Conservative legal heavyweights serving on the Convention of States Legal Board of Reference include Mark Levin, Professor Robert P. George, Professor Randy Barnett, Ambassador C. Boyden Gray, Matt Staver, Andrew McCarthy, Dr. John Eastman, Charles Cooper, Professor Nelson Lund, Michael Farris, and Mark Meckler. Strategy for passage of the COS resolution. The strategy for passage of the resolution is state-specific and is carried out by the 5 million-plus citizen activists recruited from within 100% of the state legislative districts. Citizen activists put the appropriate pressure on their state representatives to sponsor or vote in support of the resolution. Learn more at conventionofstates.com.
Imagine you were in this room. We're in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the very place where the Constitution was done and the Declaration of Independence. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach, here with Mark Meckler. And Mark, if you had been in this room when it happened, when the Constitution was created, and George Mason stands up at the very end to say, hey guys, wait a minute, we messed up, we got a real problem here, what would you do?
I'd have probably been irritated. Sit down,
you hear the
George.
grumbling, right?
Yeah,
They're like, let's go home.
Man. It's 2 days. September 15th, 1787, 2 days before the end of convention. You guys have heard the story. It's hot in here.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have HVAC back then, so it's hot. The windows are boarded up. They're all irritated by now. They want to go home. Mason stands to address the men, and he says, we have a terrible problem with the document we've drafted.
I can hear the groans now.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh,
Here
George again, right?
Yeah.
And he says, we've given the power to the federal government to propose amendments should they deem them necessary, but we've not given the same power to the people acting through the states.
Now I got to stop you there. Back up. They've been here for all those weeks to create a federal government. They've redesigned the whole thing. The Constitution is designed. Here's our 3 branches of government. Here's what states can do. Here's what federal government can do. They've created all of that. And he's saying, wait a minute, we have a problem.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of lost history in there. Actually, the very first draft that went out to the working committees contained this power. The states had the power.
I didn't know that.
The federal government didn't, actually. And when it came back, somehow it had been reversed. And so he notices this at the last minute, literally brings this problem up. Everybody groans. We think we don't have the videotape, right?
Yeah.
But then he asks a question that I think is the real question. And this question resonates across the ages. He says, are we
Well, folks, it looks like we're having some technical issues, not on our end, but on the committee's end, the subcommittee's end. We're not able to get any audio right now, although you can see that the subcommittee has uh, began, and we can see COS volunteers and supporters around the table, including Karen Schuster. Looks like she might be offering some testimony to the subcommittee. So we're going to try and figure out how we can get audio and hear what's going on, because we do have video. We can see that the committee has begun. So just hang tight for a minute or two. We're going to jump to a quick video while we try and get audio on their end. Thanks for hanging tight.
Article 5 of the United States Constitution gives we the people the power to put the federal government back in its constitutional box and expand liberty for all. Once 2/3 of the states pass similar applications, a convention of states will be called, and there is nothing the federal government can do to stop it. This isn't a red movement or a blue movement. It's an American movement based on one fundamental question: who decides? Who should decide the issues that affect your community? Washington, D.C., or you? The Convention of States Action Resolution applies for an Article 5 convention that would propose constitutional reforms limited to 3 topics. First, fiscal restraints on the federal government. With over $140 trillion in unfunded liabilities, we need a balanced budget. But our resolution also allows for caps on federal spending and taxation. The second topic is limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. The Supreme Court has authorized the feds to have control over almost every aspect of our lives. The COS Action Resolution empowers us to restore the Constitution to its original intent and return power to the states and the people. Finally, term limits. Thanks to a corrupt ruling class in Washington, trust in the federal government is at an all-time low. That's why our resolution gives Convention of States commissioners the power to send the career politicians packing, including the judiciary and other federal officials. So what can you do? First of all, sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Call, email, or request a meeting with your state legislators to ask them to...
The reasons why I'm in favor of SJR 2004. Thank you. I'm John Strathman. I'm a lobbyist for Valor, Iowa, and we have declared against this resolution. If I may, I have some information I'd like to pass to the 3 representatives on the committee. Thank you. So I've been, as I said, that Valor has registered against this resolution. But I'm going to be more narrowly focused in my comments, talking about one of the reasons why the resolution is being cited as a need is term limits. I've been tracking turnover and incumbents in both the Iowa House or the Iowa General Legislature and the U.S. Congress. At the top of that table, you see the actual number of incumbents replaced each year in a non-election year. In the center, you see the number of incumbents replaced during an election year. I'm going to ask you to just focus on the bottom where it has the summary, the total change. So for example, in the Iowa House with 100 seats, you'll see there have been 124 representatives replaced in the last 10 years out of 100 seats. In the Iowa Senate with 50 seats, 54 have been replaced. In the U.S. House with 435 voting members, 402 have been replaced in the last 10 years. And in the U.S. Senate, and I'd also point out in the U.S. Senate, by design in our Constitution, they serve a 6-year term, and 55 have been replaced. But by design, it takes longer to replace them. So I'd like to, when you look down there, it says percent still there. So I'll just focus on the Congress. 34% of House members are still serving after 10 years, and 55% of the Senate. The U.S. Congressional Research Service issued a report that predates my data. It was dated November 20 of 2020. And what the Congressional Research Service found in the House, 71% of the House members had served less than 12 years. 60% had served less than 8 years, and 42% had served less than 6 years. In the Senate, 41% had served more than 12 years. The next piece of paper I'd ask you to look at is this one. And this is just Is it? Okay, well, thank you. That last piece, just, thank you.
I'm Jim Walker from Colo. I want to start by defining some terms. There are two terms that get thrown around about these conventions. One is that it's a constitutional convention. The other is that it's an amendments convention. The definition of those terms, a constitutional convention is a convention called for the purpose of writing a new constitution. There is no authority in our constitution to do that. That would be a last resort after the failure of the country. It's not authorized by the Constitution. What we're asking for here is a convention to propose amendments. That is the exact language out of Article 5. There is no authority to replace the Constitution, as some will claim. They'll also claim that we've had founders and Supreme Court justices that have spoken against this process. Can you name any legislation that passes through any court or any room that doesn't have someone speak against it? I can. The convention process in Article 5. In 1787, when this was being proposed, nobody opposed it. It was voted in unanimously. It's the only thing in the Constitution that was unanimously accepted. They understood that there had to be a balance. Congress had the ability to propose amendments. The state should have the ability to propose amendments, and that's all they can do is propose. What comes out of that convention still has to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. I use the example of a convention for water rights to a river. You invite the states that border that river, have something to do with that river. They will decide on the rules for that convention, which will be something along the lines of Robert's Rules of Order or something to that effect. If somebody at that convention proposed, hey, I think we should introduce a new constitution, they'd be laughed out of the room because it's not part of that, the scope of that convention. It can't happen. All right. I support this. I would like you to pass it, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deb Davis. I'm from Johnston, Iowa, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Concerned Women for America. First of all, I'd like to thank you for each of you for the service that you give to the state. I know there's a lot of hours you put in that no one ever sees, so thank you. I'm against this resolution, HJR 2004, and I'm just going to start with some quotes about the conventions. James Madison on November 2nd, 1788. This is what he said. Having witnessed the difficulties and dangers experienced by the first convention, I should tremble for the result of a second. The most violent partisans, individuals of insidious views, would strive to be delegates and would have a dangerous opportunity of snapping the very foundations of the fabric of our country. Former Supreme Court Justice Arthur Goldberg, 1986, said, "There is no enforceable mechanism to prevent a convention from reporting out wholesale changes to our Constitution and Bill of Rights." Former U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice Warren Burger, 1988, "A new convention could plunge our nation into constitutional confusion and confrontation at every turn." Late Justice Antonin Scalia stated in 2015, "A constitutional convention is a horrible idea." Today would be a risky time to proceed forward with a constitutional convention due to fierce national division, outspoken interest groups, protesters, and media frenzy. And here's some questions I have. Who would select delegates? And would they represent your views? Who would Iowa send? The ones for or against private property rights? Who would Minnesota send? Would delegates be appointed by one state, one vote, or according to the Electoral College model, giving some states very few delegates? It's my understanding that once delegates are selected, they can set their own rules or propose. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Nathan Hayes. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. In my lifetime, I've watched the federal government run amok, run rampant, run loose, run roughshod over our enumerated and protected liberties and rights. In my lifetime, the federal government has only passed a budget 4 times. And regrettably, the Democrats have done a better job nationally at passing a budget than the Republicans in my lifetime. Over 80% of people in the country believe there should be term limits. No one should be sitting in Congress or the Senate for 50 years. Chuck Grassley, between his term in the Iowa legislature and the federal legislature, has been in one political position or another since 1958, when Eisenhower was the president. And then finally, when you talk about the scope of the government, there are currently 440 federal agencies in the United States government, almost 10 million employees for the United States federal government. The federal government is the largest employer in the country. The federal government squanders and wastes more money than you can shake a stick at. I spent almost 30 years in service to the federal government in uniform at various echelons and degrees. And my personal experiences in watching the federal government flush my money down the toilet as a taxpayer has been absolutely atrocious. I support this resolution 2004, and I ask you to please do the same and move it to committee. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Gideon. I am a registered lobbyist, but in this meeting, I will be speaking on just behalf of myself. I live in Indianola. I am urging you to oppose the amendment. One thing I just would like to point out is that in Article 5, there's 143 words total. 90 of those words are in the first paragraph that pertains to actually amending the Constitution. So as far as copious rules and regulations for how a constitutional or a convention to amend the Constitution would happen, I find the Constitution giving very, very minimal instructions for how that's going to be done. The thing that I would like to talk about today specifically is the representation component. Either way, we have representation to propose amendments to the Constitution. Article 5 convention assumes we would have ideal representation. To me, the math just doesn't check. If ideal representation is achievable, it should be achievable now. Congress is nothing more than our representation that we've chosen. And so representation to a convention would be the same as representation. If it were achievable, Congress would already be filled with ideal representation. If Congress were ideally representative, constitutional amendments could be passed the same way all previous amendments have been passed. So either ideal representation is achievable and a convention is unnecessary, or it isn't and a convention doesn't solve that problem. I urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
I'm Paul Dykstra, and I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm a retired farmer, been involved in politics for a number of years. And the one thing I think we can probably all agree on here is that we all want a better America. It's how do we get there? And since it seems that there are many in favor of changing up the Constitution for multiple reasons, I haven't heard of any number of states that come in there for the same reason, but term limits, balanced budget, Hawaii Second Amendment, they want to do away with it. There's just a number of things. The danger that I see in it is we don't have the caliber of people in our nation that we had at one time. I wouldn't be afraid of having a convention with everybody that's in this room. You know, we're kind of Iowa nice, and we do those things together, and we can work out things. But in a nation that can't decide when life begins, they can't decide, even in Iowa here, we can't decide what eminent domain, how it pertains to things. We want to overrun our own Constitution. So what makes anybody think that a new Constitution or new amendments, that who we elect is going to follow them? There's no teeth in anything. We've seen the books in the libraries go back to pornography, even though the rules were passed in our Senate and the House, because there's no enforcement. If people aren't willing to follow rules, it doesn't matter what you put down in the books. Those code books are pages and pages and pages, and you can add more pages to them. It doesn't matter unless people. The greatest threat in the world, God gave us. He gave us the 10 commandments to follow. The wages of sin are death. What do? We keep sinning. We don't follow the 10 commandments. What makes anybody naive enough to think they'll follow anything new in the Constitution? Let's get back to following the Constitution. Thank you.
I'm Pam Mackey Taylor. I'm representing the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club. We oppose this legislation. Our politics have become extremely divisive, and an Article 5 convention leads us on the path of an even more divisive society. A rogue convention is a great threat to our democracy to our freedoms and to the respect for our society. Even though these bills attempt to control the issues the delegates can consider at a convention. We urge no vote on this. Thank you.
Representative Zabner? Sure. Yeah, we got we have a few minutes.
Madam Chair, appreciate everyone that came out to comment. This is always an interesting conversation every year. My concern with this resolution is that Social Security relies on the Social Security Trust Fund. I know there are over 600,000 people in Iowa counting on their Social Security check every year. Balanced budget amendment would take that away, and I think that's wrong. I think they've earned those benefits. I will be a no.
Respectfully, I'm going to disagree with that, but I will my comments are going to be strictly in favor of the bill. I know we've gotten a lot of public comments that we've all received here, most of them in favor of the bill. I will tell you, as a former congressional candidate, I have seen firsthand how out of control our federal government is. I have never been as strong of supporter as I am today of Convention of States. Because of that reason. So I am very happy to sign off on this today, and Representative Dunwell has also agreed to sign off on this today. For those of you that have concerns about who our delegates are, we will also have a bill that specifically decides how we are going to choose our delegates. We did that as an amendment last year, not as an amendment, as a standalone bill last year. We will do that the same to put those guardrails around who is going and whether or not we can recall a delegate if they decide to go off the rails and not do what we've asked them to do through this Convention of States bill that we're passing today, or the resolution. So with that, we are going to go ahead and move that back to committee, and stay tuned. Thank you.
All right, Rita. Well, we're back. We were just watching the subcommittee vote in the House, and it was on the state government subcommittee, and 2-1. So it goes to a full committee now.
That's right. We did it. Great news coming out of Iowa. I know Producer G is expecting that Regional Director Karen Schuster is going to join us in just a few minutes. What did you think of the hearing, Andrew?
Well, there was quite a bit of opposition. I was not expecting that. I don't remember the last time we had this last year if there was as much opposition, but there was Concerned Women for America, the Sierra Club, several lobbyists. Weird terms being thrown around. Ideal representation. I didn't know what that is. I don't know if she was meaning equal representation. I don't. Yeah. Some of them. There were some odd comments that we had in this hearing, and of course, we had some technical issues, so we missed several testifiers. We probably missed the best testifiers who were in support of our legislation, but there were still some good ones that I heard. So what about you? What were your thoughts on the subcommittee hearing?
Well, first, I'm hoping that Karen can maybe just give us a little summary when she comes on of her testimony, because I really always love hearing Karen's testimony. It seems like every year she comes up with a little bit of a new way to package her support for COS, and it's always really good. I also want to point out, Andrew, that first of all, we were pretty confident of the vote in this subcommittee, but also a lot of our grassroots supporters, as you heard referenced there at the end, submitted their support via written public comment, and that goes to the subcommittee members as well. So I was glad she referenced that. It was great to see the subcommittee chair, Shannon Lundgren, I think, say that she has never been a bigger supporter of COS than she is right now. That was incredible. Loved hearing that. We'll have to get producer G to clip that for us to use in the future. But yeah, you're right. The opponents really came out of the woodwork, didn't they? Talking about ideal representation. My personal favorite was the gentleman who said, hey, we don't follow the 10 commandments, so we can't amend our Constitution. He seemed really like, this is a revelation to him that people don't perfectly follow the 10 commandments. Well, bless your heart, buddy, but that's why the founding fathers gave us a constitution with checks and balances. Right.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very good argument for why we shouldn't do this. And honestly, it's an argument that we hear all the time that they're not following the rules now. So why should we add more rules? Well, I mean, if that's the argument, then I guess we just shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't vote. We shouldn't be engaged citizens. We should just disregard our civic duty. And the founding fathers would laugh at that. They'd be like, no, if things are bad, this is a time for you to get active. This is a time for you to push forward to change. You don't just throw your hands up and give up. So I think it's a bad argument. And I think most Americans would disagree with that. They'd say, yeah, the solution is to go in and provide solutions that can actually change the way things are being done right now. So, anyway.
Andrew, I have to point out too that it particularly bothers me when it's people of faith who are saying we need to be afraid of this. We can't do anything because it's scary. That is not a good testimony. Right. The God that I serve is, holds all things in his hands. He is absolutely sovereign over this process. And he repeatedly in the scriptures tells us not to be afraid, be strong and have courage, and tells his people to go forward and act in courage because of their faith in him. So that's just a little pet peeve of mine. Another pet peeve of mine, and want to get your thoughts on this, is the way Concerned Women for America, which I would like to rename Super Scaredy Cat Women of America, wrenches quotes from the founding fathers and other people completely out of context. Drives me crazy. And I see we have Karen.
We do. Karen, are you with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Karen, we can hear you loud and clear.
Who else is with you there?
We have several supporters here that came out to testify and show up in support of Convention of States.
Woohoo.
Hey guys, thanks for showing up today. That's awesome. Love seeing our supporters with their buttons there.
Yep. So Karen, tell us how's the room feeling? How's everyone feeling now that we have 2 votes and we're going to the full committee now?
That was Logan. I don't know if he knew we were live, but yes, it's really great. We can pass the subcommittee and we have to get through full committee by the end of next week. So we're moving along, and we had some opposition show up, but it's unfortunate that there are people that don't know enough about Convention of States, about our Constitution, about the history, to know that this is a safe process. The founders were for it. Obviously, that's why it's in there.
Right. In fact, there was not even debate at the convention. They voted unanimously to include the convention process in Article 5, which is just proof that people like to take their quotes later completely out of context and misuse them. Yeah. So, Karen, do you have any idea how soon we could see this go to the full committee?
I would expect that we're going to see a committee hearing next week. The deadline is February 20th, which is next Friday, that we have to get through the full committee hearing in order to make that what we call funnel date.
Okay, great. Well, what are you all headed off to do now? Are you going to maybe meet with some legislators, whip up some more votes for us?
We might be doing that. I suppose there's some people that have to get back to work. Some of them have driven quite a long way to be here and show their support. So a few of us will talk to our legislators, but we are looking very positive here in Iowa.
Well, God bless you, and God bless all of those people who showed up to be there and testify, driving miles and miles, I'm sure, for several people. Before we let you go, you said that we're next Friday is when we need to get the vote in the full committee. What can our viewers do who are in Iowa to help get across the finish line in that committee?
Yeah, talk to your legislators. Make sure that they're on board. They want to hear from their constituents. They want to hear from people that live in their district. So give them a call if you can. Write them an email. Write them a handwritten letter and show your support for Convention of States and let them know that you're for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Karen. We're going to have to catch up with you next week after we hopefully get out of the full committee and where we go next after that. Thank you so much for being on the ground and giving us a little report. And thank you for all that you're doing to get Iowa across the finish line.
Thank you.
All right, Rita. Well, looks like we're about to wrap up. We were through the first leg of Iowa, the first stop, the subcommittee, and now we go on to the full committee, and then hopefully from there we can get through the full House. And so it seems that Iowa is in the running to become state 21. Any final comments before we wrap up?
I just want to share with our viewers some breaking news I just got a little while ago. So Nebraska, of course, is one of those 20 states that have already passed our COS application. However, Nebraska passed it with a sunset clause on it that is expected to expire next year. Well, it will expire next year if it's not removed. And we just got word out of Nebraska about an hour ago that the committee that our resolution to remove that sunset has been sitting in just voted it out of committee with a 5-3 vote. So that's great news coming out of Nebraska. Looks like Nebraska is going to step up and pass it a second time, but this time without that sunset clause so that it will not expire. So yeah, that's 2 victories in one day. I'll take it.
Yes, that's awesome. And thanks for bringing that up, Rita, because that's something we don't really talk a lot about when we're doing these live coverage, these live hearings and stuff like that, is that we are still working in past states. We don't stop our grassroots activity once we pass a state. There are several sunset clauses, like you said, that have been removed because of our grassroots activists who continue the hard work. And there's F3 legislation that we support that is centered on fundamental rights, federalism, and freedom. There's 34 ready. There's all kinds of legislation that is being worked on in these states that have already passed the COS resolution. So our grassroots, they don't kick up their feet once they get the resolution passed. They keep going. So with that, Rita, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off. Our viewers, you can make sure that you subscribe to all of our social media accounts. This is where you can receive updates and get notifications on things that are happening across the country. When we have hearings like this and we have other updates, make sure you're going to conventionofstates.com/COS live. That's where you can check that little notification bell for YouTube, and that's how you can stay in the know with everything that's happening with these committee hearings. Stay tuned for Mark Meckler's Battle Cry. That's on Sunday evenings. You're not gonna want to miss Mark Meckler's his comments and his perspective on things that are going on with the movement and what's going on in the news nationally. And you can ask him questions if you go to conventionofstates.com/ask Mark. Also, make sure that you're getting involved as an activist with Convention of States. We need more volunteers on the ground, just like those people in Iowa who can go to the legislature, talk to their legislators, and who can help grow the grassroots army. So if you feel compelled to take action, you can go to conventionofstates.com/act. That's where you can see all of the volunteer roles that we have. Get plugged in with your state team, get active, and get your state across the finish line, because we need 34 states to get this thing done. All right, well, we'll be back for the next hearing. Thank you for tuning in, and have a blessed day.